Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Raw Men. And today we're talking with Kevin Bolling. Kevin Bolling is the executive director with the Secular Student Alliance. Mr. Bolling, what is the SSA?
The Secular Student Alliance is a nonprofit organization specifically targeted at students. So we're the only organization within the secular movement that is solely dedicated to working with students in college and universities. We have a handful of high school chapters, and we even had a middle school chapter start last year. And we looks like we'll have one starting in North Carolina this upcoming winter, which is great. So I think more importantly than a national organization, the Secular Student Alliance is about 300 chapters, student chapters, all across the country, high schools, colleges, universities. And it's really their student organizations. So they're on campus. For many people who grew up in religious households and who have now become non-religious, this is really sort of oftentimes their first opportunity to explore that identity, to be with other people who are non-religious for the first time, and then to sort of what we encourage is leadership development, building community, and then also now, okay, great, you're non-religious. What are you going to do? How are you going to make your community a better place? How are you going to make your world a better place? What are you going to do to impact the world? So that's a large part of what it is. It's the students all across the country who make up this organization.
That's what a brilliant thing about college is. I mean, when you get out of the home environment that you were nurtured in, even if discarding high school, for example, because high school and colleges, as you know, have a completely different mindset.
Right.
When people make that transition and they realize that you're just primates at that level, and now you're people, and you have new ideas thrust upon you. And I remember, like the first time that I went to school, I remember having a lot of my preconceptions challenged, and a lot of the things that I thought were true or that I had been told all my life were true ended up not being so. And of course, then everybody gets into the new concepts that they've never even delved into before, and taking advantage of that I've noticed a lot of the tables for like the different Christian organizations and so forth, and now we have the emergence of a few Muslim organizations as well. And how does the SSA stand up against those, or maybe not stand up against them is probably the best way to phrase that, but how do you compete with or
Sure. There's it's a couple interesting things. One, oftentimes a campus can have, 20, 30, 100 religious organizations. And then there's only one Secular Student Alliance. So we want to make sure that we're providing that community and that opportunity for as many students as possible. And that's really where our supporters and donors come in, and our students taking that initial leap and starting a chapter, getting involved with a chapter. For a large part, we and more are working with religious organizations on campus. So, for example, our SSA chapter in Southeast Missouri, they are the organization on campus that has hosted and put together and organized the sort of the religious discussion panel on campus every year. They wanted to make sure they were at the table and had a voice for non-religious students and offering that perspective, which is oftentimes left out. And then now they invite the other organizations to come and participate. 2 years ago, they won Outstanding Organization of the Year on their campus from their university. So we're finding more and more working together with religious organizations. So we had a student organization at Clarendon University who has been experiencing a lot of harassment and vandalism from a particular evangelical organization on campus. And so where they actually went to the campus police and the student government and filed an official complaint. They had a relationship with Cru, Campus Crusade for Christ, previously, where they would they went Christmas caroling, and Cru brought some traditional Christmas songs, and our group brought some non-religious holiday carols. But it was a good environment for them to sort of interact and to learn from each other. So when they went to our student group went to the student government, the conservative religious group came in and said, no, this isn't true. Our organization was making it up. We were actually the ones harassing the religious group. And members of Crew came in and said, no, we've worked with the SSA. We know that they're good people, and we're sorry, but they're telling the truth. And the evangelical group is not. So we're finding more and more that the groups are working together, and we encourage that. We have religious members who come to the Secular Student Alliance. Some people may be questioning, and where on a campus can you often have this conversation if you're a religious person. So typically within your religious student group, it's not a very comfortable place to express doubts. Where that's clearly, if you want to have that conversation, our SSA chapter is often a really safe place to do that. Whether the student becomes, more concrete in their religious beliefs, or goes, I get that sort of doubt, and begins that journey. I'm happy that they had the place to have that conversation. So I think that's a great thing. One thing that I think last year, 12 of the largest Christian campus ministries got together because they noticed sort of a trend within college students, for their college students. And so their own survey, they realized that 70% of conservative Christian students in their first year of college were leaving the religion. So they didn't really define what that was. So my guess is that they stopped going to Mass or the student group or to the facility near the campus and those sorts of things. So they have dumped millions of dollars into trying to stop that. And they've also started creating resources for students to download off the internet and reconvert atheist students, if you will. But so those are some of the things that we're up against, but also the good partnerships that we have in working with our student groups, working with religious groups on campus as well.
It's interesting you mentioned the reconvert atheist thing. I've encountered a handful of people who we can verify actually were atheists by their posts, by their public persona, and
right.
so at some point in the past, and then they convert into Christianity. And the strange thing is that when talking to them, if you were an atheist at one point, then you know what we are looking for. It's like when somebody walks away from religion, you remember when you walked away from your family faith, and then nobody wanted to know why, right? They just don't even talk to me. I want to keep believing. And yet when they turn around and they say, I'm gonna adopt this belief again. Well, now you know exactly why. I'm leaning in to say, why?
Right.
The religious people, I don't think would ever, they're not terribly interested in your deconversion story, why you left the faith. But I am very interested in why you adopted it again, if you did. And I've encountered a handful of people, just a few, because, this doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. And every interview that I've had so far, without exception, their reasoning, if anything, is actually worse than that of people who were born into the faith and raised in it and never questioned it. The people who go back into the faith, complete mystery. Best example, and this conversation reminded me of it again and again and again, was this one girl who was actually an atheist activist once upon a time, until she suddenly became Christian. Mm-hmm. And I got her on a radio interview, and I start pressing her, for the reason why. And I guess nobody ever bothered to ask her why. Even the Christians don't ask her why. They don't care why. Okay, you believe, good. We don't care why. And it's wise that they don't go that way. But I ask, of course, why. And she says, well, I just looked at the evidence. I'm like, what evidence? Well, I just followed the facts. What facts? And I pressed, and it was 20 minutes of trying to press this girl into an answer, until finally I got it. The answer was the reason that she decided that there is a God and a soul and an afterlife and a heaven, and that Jesus is the way, and all of that, was because the guys at the Christian table at campus were hot.
Well, we all have our reasons, I guess.
Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, no, perfect. Marketing is important, and I think the religious community knows, consistently they need different marketing to pull people in. So, okay, hot guys, maybe that does it for some people.
Yeah, I'm a little mystified at that. I mean, I've dated some fantastically beautiful religious girls, really, but you just can't be pretty enough.
Has never tempted you to go back and
exactly. No, as a matter of fact, I actually had a relationship kind of collapse at one point when I asked this girl if you could. I loved this girl, absolutely. I mean, I just really, really did. I was so into her. But I asked her this question one day: if you could change any event in history, what would it be? And she said she referred to an illicit relationship that she would abruptly end a illicit relationship between Eve and the serpent.
Oh,
and I was dumbfounded at that answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, wasn't ready for that.
No. There's lots of other moments you could want to stop, but yeah.
Yeah.
From actual history.
So what is it that the Secular Student Alliance does for people or for like events is where I'm going for now.
Okay, sure. So the student chapters are autonomous. So they really, we want them to be. We want them to be doing programs, activities, lectures, discussions on their campuses that are going to meet the needs of their campus. So a very rural, chapter at a rural college in a very Christian area may be looking at, hey, we just need a safe place where we can come together and be with people who are like us. To where if you're in a larger city and it's less, you may be doing dog. You maybe do all sort of activism, community service projects. So it's really going to be different for what the organizations are. But our groups, I think, like many sort of atheist, free thought, humanist groups, great. They love to have a great conversation, great debates. Sometimes they do that alone. Sometimes they're inviting other student organizations to come be a part of that. One of our chapters, once a month, every other month, they team up with a religious group. So 1 month, the religious group picks the movie they get to watch, and then they have a discussion about it afterwards. The next month, our group picks the movie, and then they have a discussion about it. So very different themes on movies. But through the national office, we provide activity guides and a lot of free services to our student chapters. And we then have things like we sponsor Ask an Atheist Day twice a year for students to actively be on campus with a table, being out and sort of open about their non-religion, their non-belief, and having people ask questions about that. So we really think that's a great place to start in normalizing. We started last year our secular spring break. So talking about putting values into action. And so last year we actually took a group of students to Puerto Rico and we're on Yabaco where Hurricane Maria came ashore and we were helping rebuild homes and rebuild roofs while we're there. This upcoming year, we work with Foundation for Non-Belief on last year and this year. And this year we're going to the Bahamas. So the island in which the hurricane just sat over for 24 hours. So we're doing things like that. We have a national conference every year. We bring our students together for leadership development and empowerment. This year we're actually going to be in DC. And we're working with American Atheist and SCA and doing a secular student lobby day. So we'll have our conference during the weekend and then take them on Capitol Hill to meet with the staff of the representatives and to actually do some lobbying and be involved in that political process. So we're working with SCA and some of the other groups for the Secular America Votes and encouraging our student chapters to do voter registration on campus, as well as local humanist, atheist, free thought groups to do voter registration in their local communities.
That all sounds outstanding. I've worked with the SSA a couple of times. I'm a speaker, so the SSA used to bring us in for a lot of speaking events at colleges and such. I had no idea that you guys did all of this other, like charity relief sort of work. And I'm really encouraged that you guys are politically active, to do the lobbying and everything, because the worst thing that can happen in this country is political apathy. The argument that don't vote, it doesn't matter,
Right.
object by abstaining. This is the worst thing, right? People really need to be involved in that. And so I don't know what my next question would be. It just erupts a topic for me. But you just said something else, which I found curious and I want to know more about. You said that you have the Christian group and the SSA working together and that you pick the movies and go watch those.
Yeah.
That has got to be a rare situation, I would think, to my experience, because I'm used to fundamentalists, and they're not interested in knowing that your alternate perspective exists.
True, and I think oftentimes, I think we're seeing it happen more and more, which we like. We want the normalization of being non-religious or being an atheist. For college students, we think is important, so we definitely want to encourage that. So where our students are able to, and they're most often the ones who are starting to make these connections on their campuses. By sharing what other chapters are doing, a chapter in the neighboring state may get an idea and try something, try to make a connection as well. We oftentimes, I think, religious groups will reach out to our students with, I think, the guise of friendship and wanting, the invitation is extended, I think, because they think we can bring them back into the fold, which for our students is not going to work. But if we can use, and that's not always the case, but if we can use that then to, again, start a conversation, learn more about each other. Our students, tend to be extremely knowledgeable about religious beliefs and a variety of religious beliefs, which I don't think is, strange to anyone in the community. So they're like, let's have a conversation. We're all for it.
What advice would you give because I've heard this before about people, somebody asked about how to start an SSA group or how to start they were in college and they wanted to start an atheist meetup group. And I said, well, if you're in school, connect to the SSA, and that I think would be the best route for you. But they didn't know how to do that. And I confess, I didn't know how to tell them to do that other than to give them your website. So what would you suggest, maybe beyond what's on the website? What advice would you say if you're talking to a student? I happen to be a student. They asked me to start at SSA at my school.
Right.
But I didn't want to, as I'm on my way out and I'm 57. So yeah.
Well, really, and the easiest way is, one, we try to have a big online presence. So we do marketing to find students who may not know about us, and try to make that very easy for them to get connected with us. But one of the first things we do is we actually point them to the website, because we have a tab there that start a chapter. And so that's a quick and easy form for the student to fill out. So, some quick information comes right to us. And generally within 24 hours, we are in contact with that student. So we immediately send an email out, and then we'll go ahead and call the student as well, trying to get in touch with the student. So we talk with the student, find out what they want to do, what their motivation is, and what they want to accomplish, because we want to help them meet whatever their particular need is, and we recognize those are different. But with that, we send them a bunch of information via email, but we also send them a huge starter kit. So it's and this is all for free. So it's the sample constitution and bylaws and things they're going to need on their campus to get the organization started, to make it easy as possible. And then with that, we send a bunch of pre-printed promotional material, marketing material. So if they have a tabling event, or if they're going around passing things out, that's already done for them. We send them flyers that they can hang up on their campus. So we know that not all students can be open and want to give out their personal information. So we actually set them up with their school at secularstudents.org email address. They can hand that out. We'll send them business cards so they can pass that out. And so students have a way to find them without that individual student having to give out their personal information, because we understand there's a risk at that. So that's all free stuff that we do. We typically now can get a student organization up and running in about a week with a student. Clearly the student on the at the campus is the one who has to be energized and take those steps. But we've got that process down pretty quick and easy. So when I've been with the organization for about 2.5 years now. And when we first started, if you were a student and you sent a message to us saying, hey, I want to start a chapter, we had about a 20% rate of starting. So, 5 students would send in and 1 would actually start a chapter. So when we did
and that's on the student there.
It is. Yeah. Oh yeah. We're responding and those sorts of things. But yeah, so we really looked at, okay, when the student's interested, let's strike while it's hot. Let's make sure that we're reaching out multiple ways. We automatically send out the starter kit and those sorts of things. So we said it's better for us to front load the system to make it easier for the student. And so last year we ran our numbers. That's up to 66% now. So we're really, working with the students, and if you want to start it, we're going to be right there with you and just really pushing that and making that happen. So we're doing everything that we can. And the reality is we have great student leaders on the other side. So I think if anyone's seen our scholarship winners from this year or last year or previous year, they're amazing students on what they're doing, not only involved in secular issues and their secular activism, but also involved in a multitude of other things on their campus. So I'm always just proud of the students that we get to work with every day and what they're doing on their campuses. And I always thought I was busy in college, but I'm amazed at what our students are involved with. So they make it very easy for us.
Well, then let me add to my next question. That would be to relate to me your favorite, your most notable success story, whether it is a student or whether it is an event, a debate that was held, or whatever.
Sure, my favorite one. Oh my gosh. One thing that keeps popping up in my mind is we have Baylor University. So Baylor has been if you're not familiar, Baylor, small Baptist, but private religious school in Waco, Texas. And they have been an organization for probably about 12 years now. So I think our longest running SSA chapter at a religious campus. So it was really, it was sort of interesting. I went down and met with them, and they're not allowed to hang up publicity. They can't reserve a room. Many of our students are on academic scholarships and have to be very careful about identifying with our group in fear of losing their scholarship. But they're super active.
So, am I understanding that the religious school will deny them?
Revoke.
Okay.
Yeah.
Simply because they don't believe.
Yes. So part of why they can't be an official student organization is that all student organizations have to sign a pledge saying that they uphold and will fulfill the religious values of the institutions. And they're like, well, we can't do that because we don't believe in the religion. So they're always at the concept about one of the things they do is every Easter they go and distribute Easter eggs all over the campus. And they're inside are a little piece of candy and then positive messages about doing good in the world and, just good quotes and those sorts of things. So which I think is fantastic. Great. I love that they're doing that. So the campus they said last year, the campus has figured this out. And so people went on campus and they put out the eggs and the campus went and took them up. So I was like, well, next year when you do that, let us know, because we're going to send you like 10 times the amount of eggs to make it very difficult for them to do. But they actually, this last fall, they worked with the Muslim student organization and the Hindu student organization on campus. Again, not allowed to be recognized officially on the campus, but they're there, and petitioned to their student activities office to allow them to become official organizations. So the 3 teamed up together to do this as minority religions. And they were almost very successful. So we know that the student activity staff was in favor, but then the higher up in the school administration ultimately put a stop to it. But with small steps, we're moving in the right direction. And the interesting thing is, over the last fall semester of last year, we are almost at a dozen schools now at religious or religiously affiliated college and universities. So we've seen a tremendous growth in that happening. So the fact that religious schools don't think they've got atheists is just wrong. So.
Well, that's encouraging. It's a little disturbing to hear that a religious school would do that to students, but it is a religious school.
Religious private school, yes.
And for any believer that happens to be watching this show, I mean, they might have been shocked to hear that there would be a Christian group that would be like, antagonizing or vandalizing the secular group. It's not so surprising from this end, but.
No, and over this last fall, we've actually seen a dramatic increase in harassment, vandalism, and in sort of intimidation efforts against secular students on campus. So we find it's typically evangelical students who feel really emboldened, and are acting out more and more and more on college campuses against non-religious and minority religious students.
I've had a couple of religious conversations where somebody is all fired up, having just come from their flaming world church. Yep. And they want to evangelize me, and it looks like they want to evangelize me to death. It looks like they want to evangelize me until I'm bleeding, that kind of thing. But I've had a couple of occasions where I've been able to talk to such people, and I can see that the mystic look in their eyes when they realize that they don't have anything really. And that's kind of rewarding, especially when the guy was ready to whoop my ass minutes earlier. But we've seen, like, when you come from a very insular background, like mm-hmm. you mentioned, that you have Muslim students, you have Hindu students, and then we have the evangelical students who very often come from a very insular, protected environment. They feel emboldened because this is the only message they've ever heard, and they've been given this righteous indignation that they're justified in whatever they're doing. So, like, recently there was a Muslim student in Germany, or not a student, but a Muslim refugee from Afghanistan, who goes into Germany, and he finds himself in a liquor store, and he can't believe that they're just selling liquor out in the open. So he runs his arm into the rack and just topples everything and destroys all. And of course, he goes to jail over this. But because he came from this very protected environment, he thinks this is justified. When people come to college, they're for the first time, they're getting out of the very enclosed envelope that their parents provide. And this may be the first time that they're able to think about a lot of these things. And I have to tell you that I remember I went into one college campus where I had been told the first 3 or 4 Muslims I'd ever met in my life exactly fit the stereotypes that I'd always been taught. But then when I go to college, of course, it's a completely different environment, isn't it? And every Muslim I met there was not at all what I had been taught to expect. And indeed, everybody from every other part of the world was completely different than what I had always been taught to expect. So I realized that I had a whole lot of prejudices that would have never been, that would have gone unnoticed otherwise if I just stayed in my typical culture, but college challenges this, which I think is the most beautiful thing about it.
Right. And I think, you've sort of touched on that a little bit, time. And college is sort of this magical time where all of a sudden, and I have a student affairs background, student development background, because I worked in college and universities for a number of years. And there is developmentally, there's a interesting time during those years while students are typically in college, traditionally in college, where you're forming your own identity and you're figuring out what values you're keeping and you're not. So college is an amazing time and very special time for students to sort of explore those things and to be around people who are very different from themselves and be exposed to different things. And so I think it's very true. Students oftentimes in college is the first time you have those other experiences, different experiences, and meet different people. And I think that's why we find, for us and our organization and the mission of our organization, why working with college students is so important, to being able to give them the support, to be able to help them formulate and be proud of their identity, to help them figure out now what am I going to do with this? How am I going to live this out in my life? How do I incorporate this in my life? What other intersectional values come into play of things that are important to me that, are also integrated into this? And we find lots of students who, if you're looking at, rational issue and critical thought, okay, well, women's right issue and reproductive issues become they're not an issue anymore once you sort of have this conversation. You leave sort of the dogma of the past behind. LGBT civil rights, also very easy for our students, in moving these sorts of things. So when you start to remove that religious dogma about how your world sort of opens up and how you can see the world differently, and how the religious dogma has impacted really our institutional society within the United States as well. And I think, college age is also one of the reasons why, companies are so heavily into marketing towards college students. Pepsi and Coke know that whichever one you drink in high school or in college will be the one you drink for the rest of your life. So, for us, we're looking at if we can get in there and college students and we give them that opportunity to see, being an atheist or humanist or non-religious is an option, and allow them to go through that process themselves. We also know that that's probably what they're going to continue with the rest of their life. And so we want them to be activists. We want them not only secular activists or atheist activists, but just activists in their life. And again, making the world a better place, making their communities a better place. What are you going to do that?
And it sounds like something that is absolutely necessary in American culture. More and more now, as I've seen statistics showing that secularism is on the rise, atheism is on the rise, and I'm not just talking about the non-religious nuns.
Right.
I'm talking about the percentage of the nuns who qualify as saying that they don't have a religion and they don't think religion is important. Now, maybe they think that atheism means something that it doesn't mean. Maybe they're using some other definition that was maybe provided to them by the evangelicals who want to keep our numbers as low as possible. But regardless whether they recognize that the A word applies or not, that we can see that there's at least a quarter of the population now and growing are non-believers. And that this is actually closer to, I think, a third, because some of the polls and statistics, as I said, nobody adopts the A word very readily for whatever reason, but we know that roughly between a quarter and a third and rising already don't identify with any religion and don't claim a belief in any God. So with that being on the rise in all 50 states,
right,
simultaneously, then something like this needs to be addressed. And the thing that you said, that you had 300 SSA outlets, and I'm thinking there's 300 million people in this country, so each one of these student groups should have a million. So how many would you say is the average for a student group?
They're going to vary. So a new group starting up may start with 5, 6, 7 members. When a new student organization is starting, we actually do some social media promotion on the background, trying to sort of give them a little boost their first year. Again, sort of front loading resources, and we give them sign up sheets for when they're doing tabling or those sorts of things. And we'll find that they come back, and often we'll have 25 names their first time they do tabling. So on a campus, so that's a great start in. I think our largest chapter right now is in Utah. And has approximately with 150 members. So but you figure, Utah, it's a rural area, largely predominantly religious, Mormon. And so there's that need. And so that chapter has been around for a while. They're super active. They're involved on their campus. They're, very out there and active and those sorts of things. So that's what we want to have happen. And when you start to get those bigger numbers, that allows you, more people to get involved, more people to be comfortable. And you've got that support network behind you of being able to take those steps and those sorts of things. So I think that they were one of the campuses who did our Graveyard of the Gods. So usually around Halloween, we have, I think it's like 250 tombstones of gods from the past that we're no longer worship. And so it's out there like, okay, there's 3,000 gods or 2,500 gods that have come and gone. So why is yours so important? But it's a great conversation starter. Often makes the newspaper, the campus newspaper, conversations and those sorts of things. So again, it's a fun and oftentimes educational program that our chapters choose to do with some of the services that we're able to provide them.
And I would like for SSA groups, when you've got an event that's going on, or that you've done that you're particularly proud of, or something that your group has done that you want to share, please contact me and share that. Social media. Tweet me about it.
Sure. Happy to.
All right. Very, very good. I think we pretty much covered it. So I'm going to give you a last moment to, put in your, where do we find you? Where do we find this? And that sort of thing. And remember, all links will be below.
Fantastic. So I think for easy access to us is our website. So secular students with an S, students.org. I think if people are interested in getting in contact with us, simple email is ssa@secularstudents.org. And I think really we're very fortunate that the secular community is so supportive of us, so that other national organizations do a great job in working with us and supporting us. And we have, many supporters and donors within the secular community, and really we can't do it without them. Everything that we provide to the students is free. So if people are interested in donating, they can go to secularstudents.org/donate, and there's a slew of options of how they can donate, membership, and all those sorts of things. So we're very fortunate, and we'd like to keep that up, because the reality is we want more students involved, and we want more chapters across the country. And as we continue to expand, those donations are more and more important to us.
Outstanding. All right. Kevin Bolling?
Correct.
Thank you for being on.
Thank you for having me. And it's good talking with you again.